Morning, it's Rob G in Studio MG. Gonna restore this 73 chrome bumper MG. Picked it up on the cheap. Got a parts car with it. Don't know anything about them, but I'm learning as I go. One thing I'm working on here, it's convertible. It's sat outside for years. Got rain in it. The floorboards got to be replaced. The back of the instrument panel is rusted out here. This is where one of the heater controls, defroster controls, goes. And this is the vinyl, the steel framework is rusted away from water sitting in there. Same thing here. This is just the foam padding with the vinyl glued to it. Here's a piece of rusty steel over here. Here's where the headlight switch goes. Then you have your fuel gauge, your tachometer, oil pressure, speedometer, the temp gauge. This is, I think, the heater switch, defroster vents, or fresh air vents, heater vents, glove box. So in this corner also, it's all rusted out here. This dashboard has had a repair before where somebody replaced, they added, it looks like another layer on the top here, and then they blended it in along this valley right in here. And looking at it, for my purposes in this restoration, this isn't going to be a show car, it's going to be a driver. I want it to look good, but it doesn't have to be the best one out there, if you know what I'm saying. So I intend to restore this dash pad and use it. It's got a few cracks in it. Those will have to be filled and sanded and repaint the thing, and it'll look good when it's done. This is going to be one of those cars that from 10 feet away looks fantastic. Going down the road, you won't notice a blemish here and there. So I'm going to take this panel outside right now and use a little hand bead blaster to knock the rust off before I do any fiberglassing on it. This has to be some strength put back in here, and one of these brackets that screws to the bottom framework, that square tube that runs from side to side on the car, there's supposed to be one of those right in here, and I need to build this up, and then I'll put that on there so I can reattach that. This part of the instrument panel flexed back and forth because that brace was rusted off. It's just held on there with these 6 studs here. You got to get up under there and use a swivel socket. You can get to these. Take these nuts off. Well, that one's got an interesting joggle in it there. Kind of bent sideways. Whoops. Anyhow, we'll make it serviceable and beautiful and put it back in there. you can't buy a lot of parts for this car now. You can get a lot of parts, but like this piece here, you cannot get a new one that I know of. You can get a vinyl cover for this side, but you have to reuse your old panel and the foam, or rebuild the foam. The foam underneath here was actually hand shaped. I've read, so everyone might be a little bit different, but we're gonna make it serviceable and reuse it. When I got the car, it did not run. The previous owner put a gas tank in it, put a fuel pump, electric fuel pump on it, and I think the guy he got it from, he gave him a carburetor kit, and he worked on the carburetors. It's got dual what is SUI or SIU? I forget. Carburetors. It's a 4-cylinder with the little split manifold here with 2 carburetors. And what I found when I took the carburetors apart, he had replaced the jets. These are the internal float. The float is inside the bottom of the carburetor here. Some of them, they're off to the side. One of the float needles was upside down, so it was gonna be continuously flooding. And they had a pressure regulator, a brand new one, mounted here. It wasn't letting any fuel through. So anyhow, I got the carburetors going, put them on there, and went to start it, had absolutely no response. The didn't have any sparks, so at that point I was about ready to throw the towel in and sell it. And I thought, well, it's a simple little car. It's just got 2 bolts holding the distributor in. And so I pulled the distributor out, cleaned the points up, put the distributor back in, and it started right up, idles good, responds to the throttle good. So it looks like I'll go ahead and just keep it and restore it and have a little driver. It's got a little rust above this right wheel well here. The front right fender getting some rust under the chrome there. Like I said, the floorboards got to be replaced. I bought the right one off of eBay, a new British Motor Heritage or whatever, the original equipment type. It comes with the nut plates for the seat already installed and the studs on the bottom for your wiring harness under the car. The seat is held in with 4 1/4-inch bolts, and it's got wooden strips under the seats. Anyhow, like I said, it got a lot of water in it apparently. But what was interesting, I actually started taking the left side out first because it had a big hole at the back of the seat, and I got to taking it apart, grinding the floor panel to come out, grinding the spot welds out, and found out I didn't get a cherry. Somebody has already replaced both of these floor pans probably back in the 70s or 80s, I don't know. Well, probably in the 80s. But what they did is they cut the old ones out. There's a cross member here that goes over to the tunnel, and those nut plates are actually a piece of the original floor pan that is spot welded on the top of the cross member, and they just laid the new ones on top. So I actually got 2 layers of metal to get peeled off of these edges. instead of one. But anyhow, gonna replace both floorboards. There's a little bit of somebody had taken a hammer and smashed this down so they could put a bigger battery in it at some point. I've rolled that back up. I'll cut this out of here and fix this right. There's a cover that just Zeus's down with Zeus fasteners. Originally these had two 6-volt batteries in the early ones, and actually the first ones were positive ground. The British would say positive earth. Those cars had generators. This car came out with an alternator, so it's a negative ground, and it says that on the I think it's on the tack over there. It says negative earth. This is a 4-speed. Reverse is down next to you, and I thought, well, that's kind of backwards to what I'm used to, but they made these originally in Europe with a right-hand drive, so if you were sitting over here, it would be the same. It would be a mirror image shift pattern, I guess. Well, not really, because first and second are over there, and then third and fourth are over here. So anyhow, takes a little thinking on that one. But underneath, I don't know if there's enough light to see it. There's a little tunnel there for the steering wheel if you had a right-hand drive car. These were unibody cars. They weigh, I think it's around 2,000 pounds. You can look the specs up on YouTube, or I mean Wikipedia. I took the convertible top was bad. The framework's okay, but the top's bad, and they're about $600 for a decent one. I'm probably never gonna put that back in this car. I'm going to maybe put a roll bar back here. I've never drove a convertible before, and I think I'd like to have a little roll bar behind me, just, you know, just in case. If there's a cloud within 200 miles, you probably don't want to get this thing out of the garage anyhow, because even with a top on it, they leak. And this is a fair weather car, so I'm going to keep it in the garage. I'll probably just leave the top out. That'll take a little bit of weight out of it, and put the roll bar back in. That'll kind of equalize it out. You can see where somebody chopped 2 big holes in the back wall there of the trunk for speakers. I won't put a radio back in it. That you can't hear the engine with the radio, so you know, this is a fun little sports car. One thing about the wiring on these cars, it sucks. They have terminals and connectors just like the wiring on a motorcycle, little bullet connectors. One of the problems with this car is all those connectors are corroded, and when I first started it, the oil pressure gauge worked because it's manual, has an oil line running all the way up to it, and the speedometer worked, and that was it. And so I spent several days, weeks, going through the wiring and messing with it. I hot wired the instruments and they worked, so I knew I use the volt ohm meter, and I was not getting but about 0.15 volts to the instruments. So I finally traced that all back to the fuse block up under the fender, under the hood here, and it was corroded and nasty. Had 12 volts going in and nothing basically coming out the other side. And I thought about putting some airplane circuit breakers in, but for $13 I can get a brand new fuse block, and that one's been in there about 47 years. So I thought, you know, I'll just get a new one, slap in there, clean up all the connections, replace them if they need it, and see what happens. This has a oil cooler for the engine oil, radiator, big old honking steel fan. Like I say, there's our Lucas alternator, which isn't working currently. Once I get the fuse block and get the wiring tidied up, then we'll troubleshoot the alternator. May have to replace it, who knows, but everything else, I got the wipers to work, the headlights came on, the taillights don't work, but I think the wires are just unhooked. So it's going to take a little while to go through this rat's nest of wiring and straighten it out, but it's a fun little car. I drove it. I got it up to about 60. All right, we're back here after grit blasting the instrument panel with a little portable blaster with glass beads. Now you can see the foam on the back side of the vinyl here, and you can see the missing metal a lot better now. So what I'm going to do is put fiberglass and epoxy resin in there to put some strength back on the bottom of the panel here, and put some strength in here where this defroster control goes. This is an old, kind of like a Jeep actually, the way this thing's designed and built as far as simplicity. The controls for the heater and defroster are cable operated. Anyhow, up in this corner, I'm gonna use some 30-minute epoxy and micro balloons to kind of stick this stuff back together a little bit. I don't know if you can see that, but this stuff kind of moves, and the vinyl needs to be pulled up tighter to the frame here. There's a good example around this switch where the sorry about the quality of the video. This is the very first one I've ever done. New iPhone 12. Anyhow, there you can see how much that metal's moving. So this will need to be bonded together, get it where it needs to be, and when it sets up, then I'll put fiberglass and resin and build this all up in here real nice, and throw a little bit of carbon fiber in the matrix there. I'll probably do a couple layups of fiberglass, and then the fiberglass insulates the metal from the carbon fiber. It's a big problem with carbon fiber with corrosion, especially if you're working with aluminum. I don't know about the steel, but I'm gonna have fiberglass in between the carbon fiber and everything else, a layer or two, and that will insulate it so it won't cause the metal to corrode. Here we have a rust hole here, all along the bottom of the glove box where the door attaches. Rusted out here next to this bracket, and then this corner is gone just like on the other side. So we want to stiffen this all up and get something up against this foam here, and obviously you can't weld metal in there because you'll screw up the foam and the vinyl on the front side. And like I say, I'm going to salvage the vinyl, just do some spot repairs on it where it's cracked, and then respray the whole thing, and that'll be good enough. At some point, I have another parts car. I don't know how the instrument panel is in it. I know the foam is much worse on the front side, so I'm not gonna take it out and try to recover it. The new vinyl, you can get this molded. It's like $350, $375 or something. Then you have to get all this old stuff off and glue your new one on there and rebuild any foam. This, they call this structural foam. And I'm not gonna go down that route. I think I can fix this thing for about 50 bucks and have it perfectly serviceable, and it'll still look good. So anyhow, I cleaned it up a little bit, and the sandblasting with glass beads worked pretty good to knock the rust and paint off, so I can get a good surface to bond my fiberglass resin to my epoxy resin and fiberglass cloth. So I'm going to put some 30-minute epoxy and micro balloons in here and some clamps, and pull this together a little bit, and then when that's set up, then I'll start the fiberglass process. All right, so I got 3 layers of fiberglass laid up in here now. And there's the 30-minute epoxy that I actually use chopped fiberglass mixed with it to get in here and stick this stuff all together. And then I clamped it with these little hobby clamps to get the foam stuck back to the metal. And so I used the 30-minute epoxy up in there with the chopped fibers to stick everything back together. And then I went ahead and laid 3 layers of fiberglass in here using this resin here, which is a 2-hour cure. It's the strongest, but with the 2-hour cure, you have to have a 77-degree temperature to kick it. So I had to have the heat all the way up in here, about 80 degrees, running around sweating. But you need that to kick that 2-hour epoxy, 77 degrees minimum. And anyhow, so there's 3 layers in here right now. This is very solid. This is probably all it would ever need. Where the headlight switch, this was cracked here where it was all rusted away. Now that's solid. Where the defroster control goes in here, this is all solid now. On the other side, the corner was all rotted out on it. Now it's all solid down in here. I went ahead and put a strip on this bracket, and I'll trim that all down and sand it a little bit. This thing is held in with 6 of these studs along the top of the glare shield, and then there's 3 of these brackets that attach to this square tube that runs all the way across the car. So that one down there is at an angle. That's why this one's at this angle it's supposed to be. And of course the glove box is here. And then you have one here toward the middle. And that mounts on that tab there. And then we have one over here between the tachometer and the fuel gauge. And it was rusted off. So now we can blast this, clean it up, and reattach it so that we have all three of our lower brackets. And I'll have to clean this up and put it on the car and then reinstall the panel to locate this, because I really don't know where it goes. But once I clean it up, put it on the car with this hardware here, and then put the panel on, it'll line up, and I can glue it in place with some fiberglass cloth, and then pull it off and put several layers over the top of it. So I'll have all three of the lower mounts for the instrument panel back in place. So that's coming along nice. I think it's going to work out just fine for my purposes. So the next step will be to get this done and on there, and get some more layers on here. Probably might put a little bit of carbon fiber. I don't think I really need it, actually. This is probably plenty strong. We'll see. It depends. I change my mind about 100 times on everything I do. That's why it takes so long.